The tears streamed down Theresa Adams' face as she watched the stagecoach disappear into the distance, carrying away the man who had promised to marry her, the man who had fathered the child growing within her womb. Benjamin Wallace was gone, fled east with the first light of dawn, leaving behind nothing but a hastily scrawled note and a broken heart in Custer, Montana territory in the spring of 1879. "Miss Adams," a concerned voice called from behind her. "You shouldn't be standing out here in this weather." Theresa didn't turn, couldn't bear to face anyone in her current state. The April wind whipped around her, carrying the scent of rain and the promise of a storm that matched the one raging inside her. At 22, she had never imagined she would find herself abandoned, pregnant, and alone in a frontier town that barely tolerated unmarried women, let alone those in her delicate condition. "Miss Adams." The voice was closer now, more insistent. Finally, she turned to see Dr. Wilson, the town's aging physician, his kind eyes filled with concern beneath bushy white brows. "I know," she whispered. I needed to see if he would change his mind." The doctor sighed, gently taking her arm. "Come along. This isn't good for you or the baby." As they walked back toward town, Theresa clutched the crumpled note in her hand. Benjamin's words cut deeper with each reading. "I'm not ready to be a husband or father. Don't try to find me." 6 months of promises, of planning their life together, erased with a few heartless scrawls of ink. "What am I going to do?" she asked, more to herself than to the doctor. "My position at the schoolhouse will be there for you as long as I have anything to say about it, Doctor." Wilson replied firmly. "The town council values you too much to let you go over." He hesitated. "Over my shameful condition," Theresa finished bitterly. "Over a temporary situation," he corrected. "You're not the first woman to face hardship, and this town needs its teacher." Theresa wasn't so certain. Custer had grown significantly since the cattle drives had made it a regular stop, but it still clung to certain proprieties. An unmarried, pregnant schoolteacher would surely test those limits. As they neared the schoolhouse where she both taught and maintained a small living quarters in the back, she noticed a commotion near the general store. A group of cowboys had ridden into town, trail worn and dust covered. "New outfit passing through," Dr. Wilson explained. "Bringing a herd up from Texas to the new ranch property north of town. Caldwell's outfit, I believe." Theresa barely registered his words. Her mind was consumed with more immediate concerns: how to hide her condition, how to support herself and a child, how to face the judging eyes of the townsfolk. The betrayal still stung fresh. Benjamin's declarations of love, now revealed as hollow as a rotted stump. Little did she know that among those dusty cowboys was a man whose path would soon intertwine with hers, a man whose word, unlike Benjamin Wallace's, was as solid as the Montana mountains surrounding them. The following morning, Theresa awoke with swollen eyes and a heavy heart. She dressed carefully, selecting a loose-fitting dress that concealed her slightly rounded belly. At 4 months along, her condition was not yet obvious to the casual observer, but soon there would be no hiding it. The school bell rang promptly at 8, and despite her personal turmoil, Theresa found some comfort in the routine. 24 children from ages 6 to 16 filed into the one-room schoolhouse, bringing with them the innocent exuberance that only youth could maintain. "Good morning, children," she greeted them, forcing brightness into her voice. "Good morning, Miss Adams," they chorused in return. Young Sally Jenkins, always observant, frowned slightly. "Miss Adams, are you poorly? Your eyes look awful red." Theresa touched her cheek self-consciously. "Just a bit of spring fever, Sally. Nothing to worry about." She clapped her hands together. "Now, let's begin with our arithmetic lessons." The morning passed in a blur of lessons, recitations, and the familiar rhythm of teaching. When noon came, she dismissed the children for their lunch break, sinking into her chair with exhaustion once they had rushed out into the spring sunshine. A knock at the schoolhouse door startled her. Standing, she smoothed her skirts and called, "Come in." The door swung open to reveal a tall man in dusty range clothes. His broad shoulders filled the doorframe, and he removed his hat as he entered, revealing tousled brown hair and a face weathered by sun and wind. He wasn't handsome in the conventional way Benjamin had been, but there was something striking about his features: strong jaw, straight nose, and eyes as blue as a summer sky. "Beggin' your pardon, madam," he said, his deep voice carrying a slight Texas drawl. "Name's Brock Caldwell. I was hoping to speak with you about enrolling my brother in your school." Theresa straightened, slipping into her professional demeanor. "Mr. Caldwell, yes, I heard your outfit arrived yesterday," he nodded. "We're settling in at the old Peterson place north of town. My brother Tommy's 15. Been on the trail with me since our pa died 2 years back, but now that we're putting down roots, I'm thinking he needs proper schooling." "Of course," Theresa replied, reaching for her ledger. "We welcome all children who wish to learn. He can start tomorrow if you'd like." Brock shifted his weight, twisting his hat in his hands. "There's just one thing, madam. Tommy's education's been irregular. He might be behind the others his age." "That's not uncommon here, Mr. Caldwell. Many of our students have had interrupted learning due to the demands of frontier life. I'll assess his abilities and tailor his lessons accordingly." Relief washed over the cowboy's face. "I appreciate that, Miss Adams," she supplied. "Theresa Adams, Miss Adams." He nodded respectfully. "Tommy's a good boy. Just needs a firm hand and someone who won't give up on him when the learning gets tough." Something in his words touched a raw spot in Theresa's heart. Someone who won't give up. Unlike Benjamin, who had fled at the first sign of real responsibility. "I don't give up on my students, Mr. Caldwell," she said with more sharpness than she'd intended. If he noticed her tone, he didn't show it. Instead, he smiled, a warm, genuine expression that transformed his rugged features. "That's exactly what I was hoping to hear." As he turned to leave, Theresa found herself oddly reluctant to end the conversation. "Mr. Caldwell," she called after him. "Will you be staying in Custer permanently?" He paused at the door, looking back at her with those striking blue eyes. "That's the plan, Miss Adams. I've been driving cattle and drifting from Texas to Montana for 10 years now. Time to plant some roots of my own." With a tip of his hat, he was gone, leaving Theresa with an unexpected feeling of, was it hope? She quickly dismissed the notion. Her situation was far too precarious to entertain thoughts of any man, especially one who would surely withdraw his respect once her condition became known. The afternoon dragged on, her thoughts repeatedly straying from lessons to worries about her future. When school dismissed for the day, she remained at her desk, correspondence and lesson plans spread before her, though she made little progress on either. Another knock interrupted her reverie. This time, it was Mrs. Hawkins, the mayor's wife and head of the town's Ladies' Aid Society. "Miss Adams," the older woman said, her pinched expression already telling Theresa all she needed to know. "I wonder if we might have a word." "Of course," Theresa replied, gesturing to one of the student desks. "Please sit down, Mrs." Hawkins perched on the edge of the small chair, her back rigid. "It has come to my attention that there may be changes in your personal circumstances." Theresa's heart sank. News traveled fast in a small town like Custer. "I see. Is it true that Mr. Wallace has departed for the East?" "Without you, yes." Theresa saw no point in denying it. "He left yesterday morning." Mrs. Hawkins pressed her lips into a thin line. And is it also true that you are in a delicate condition? Theresa's hands trembled, but she clasped them tightly in her lap. Yes, Mrs. Hawkins. I am with child. The older woman's eyes widened slightly, as if she had expected denial. I see, she echoed. Well, this puts us all in a rather difficult position, doesn't it? I understand your concerns, Theresa said carefully, but I assure you my condition will not affect my ability to teach. Perhaps not at present, Mrs. Hawkins conceded, but you must realize that as your situation becomes more evident, it will create talk. Think of the children and the example of perseverance in the face of adversity. Theresa interrupted, a flash of defiance rising through her despair. Or perhaps the example that mistakes need not define one's entire life. Mrs. Hawkins stiffened. Miss Adams, I understand you are upset, but the school board and town council must consider the moral welfare of our community. And what of my welfare? Theresa asked quietly. Or that of my unborn child? A flicker of sympathy crossed the older woman's face. No one wishes to see you destitute. The Ladies' Aid Society would be willing to arrange for you to stay with a family in Helena until your confinement, and afterward to help place the child with a suitable family. No. The word burst from Theresa with unexpected force. This is my child, Mrs. Hawkins. I will not give it away. Then what do you propose? An unmarried woman with a child cannot teach our children. The board will never allow it. I need time, Theresa said, fighting back tears. Please just give me time to figure out what to do. Mrs. Hawkins rose, smoothing her skirts. The board meets in 2 weeks. Until then, you may continue your duties. But I must warn you, Miss Adams, their decision is unlikely to be in your favor unless your circumstances change dramatically. After she left, Theresa finally allowed herself to cry, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. Her worst fears were coming true. She would lose not only the man she thought she loved, but also her livelihood and her home. In the wilderness of Montana Territory, such losses could be a death sentence for her and her baby. The following morning brought Tommy Caldwell to her classroom. The boy was tall for 15, with the same blue eyes as his brother but a lankier build. He stood awkwardly at the front of the room as she introduced him to the class. This is Thomas Caldwell, she announced. He'll be joining our school from now on. I expect you all to make him feel welcome. Tommy's face flushed red under the scrutiny of 24 pairs of eyes, and Theresa felt a rush of sympathy for him. You can take that empty seat by the window, Tommy, she said gently. As the day progressed, she observed the new student carefully. As his brother had warned, Tommy's education had indeed been irregular. His reading was at the level of a child several years younger, though he showed a natural aptitude for mathematics and a surprising knowledge of geography, likely from his years on cattle drives. When school dismissed, she asked him to remain behind. Tommy, I'd like to work with you separately on some areas where you might need to catch up, she explained. Would you be able to stay an extra hour after school 3 days a week? The boy shifted uncomfortably. Don't want to be no trouble, Miss Adams. It's no trouble at all, she assured him. Teaching is my job and I want to help you succeed. Tommy studied his boots. My brother says you're the best teacher in the territory. Theresa smiled, touched by the unexpected compliment. That's very kind of him, though I doubt he's met every teacher in Montana Territory. Brock don't say things he don't mean, Tommy replied seriously. Says a man's word is all he's got out here. The statement hit Theresa like a physical blow. Benjamin's words, his promises, had proven worthless. Your brother sounds like a wise man, she managed. Tommy nodded. He raised me since I was 7 after our ma died. Pa wasn't much good after that till he passed too. Brock's been both to me. Theresa's heart ached for the boy, I'll tell you what. Why don't you go home and discuss the extra lessons with your brother? If he agrees, we can start tomorrow." Tommy's face brightened. "Yes, I'll tell him." After he left, Theresa sank into her chair, overwhelmed by the day's events and her own uncertain future. She placed a hand on her stomach, feeling a flutter that might have been the first movements of her child. "We'll find a way," she whispered to the life growing within her. Somehow. She was still sitting there, lost in thought, when a shadow fell across her desk. Looking up, she found Brock Caldwell standing in the doorway, hat in hand. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, rising quickly. "Tommy's already gone home." "I know," he replied. "Passed him on the road. He told me about your offer of extra help. That's mighty generous of you." "It's part of my job," she said simply. Brock stepped further into the room, his presence somehow making the small schoolhouse seem even smaller. "Tommy also mentioned you weren't looking too well today." Theresa stiffened. "I'm perfectly fine. Begging your pardon, but you don't look fine." His directness startled her. "You look like someone who hasn't slept or eaten properly in days." "Mr. Caldwell, while I appreciate your concern, folks in town talk," he interrupted, his voice gentle despite the blunt words. "Heard about your situation. Man leaving you in the lurch like that." Heat rushed to Theresa's face, a mixture of shame and anger. "My personal affairs are not a subject for town gossip, Mr. Caldwell, nor are they any concern of yours." He didn't back down. "Maybe not. But I've got a proposition for you all the same." "A proposition," she repeated warily. "A job. Out at my ranch. Tommy needs a tutor and I need someone to help get the place in order. It's just me, Tommy, and 3 hands right now. Place needs a woman's touch and you need—" "I don't recall saying I needed anything, Mr. Caldwell," she interrupted, bristling at his presumption. He met her gaze steadily. "No, you didn't. But I know a drowning person when I see one, Miss Adams. I'm offering you a rope." Theresa turned away, fighting back tears. "The town council won't let me continue teaching once my condition becomes obvious." "I figured as much," he said quietly. "Small towns have long memories and short charity." "And you think taking charity from a stranger is better?" she asked, turning back to face him. "It's not charity, it's a fair exchange. You educate Tommy, keep house, and I provide room, board, and wages." Simple as that. Theresa studied him, trying to discern his true motives. "Why would you do this? You don't know me." "I know enough," he replied. "Know you're a good teacher from how Tommy talks about just one day in your class. Know you've got courage, facing this town alone in your condition. Know you deserve better than being cast out." His words touched something deep within her, but caution held her back. "People will talk even more if I go to live at your ranch." "Let them," he said with a shrug. "I've never much cared what people say about me." "Question is, which matters more to you right now, what folks think, or having a safe place for you and your child?" Put that way, the answer seemed obvious. Still, Theresa hesitated. "I would need my own quarters, and I would expect to be treated with respect." "You'd have the old foreman's cabin." "It's small but sound, with its own door. As for respect, that's given freely to anyone who earns it, which you already have in my book. And when the baby comes, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Plenty of room on a ranch for a young'un to grow up healthy and strong." Theresa closed her eyes, weighing her limited options. Stay in town and face certain dismissal, poverty, and possibly being forced to give up her child, or accept this stranger's offer, which at least gave her time to plan her future. "I need to think about it," she finally said. Brock nodded, seeming unsurprised. "Fair enough. Offer stands until you decide." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded paper. "Location of the ranch if you decide to accept. It's about an hour's ride north." As he turned to leave, Theresa found herself asking, "Why are you really doing this, Mr. Caldwell?" He paused, his expression thoughtful. "Let's just say I know what it's like to be alone with responsibilities that seem too heavy to bear. No one should have to face that without help." After he left, Theresa unfolded the paper. It contained a simple map to the Peterson property, now the Caldwell Ranch, along with a note in a surprisingly neat hand. "Offer stands, no strings attached. BC." For the first time since finding Benjamin's note, Theresa felt a small spark of hope. 2 days later, with the school board meeting looming and whispers following her through town, Theresa made her decision. She packed her meager belongings into 2 trunks, wrote a letter of resignation to the school board, and arranged for the local livery stable owner to drive her to the Caldwell Ranch. The journey north took them through rolling grasslands bursting with spring wildflowers. In another time, Theresa might have found the scenery beautiful, but today, her stomach churned with anxiety over what awaited her. "Here we are, Miss Adams," the driver announced as they crested a hill. Below them lay a sprawling ranch house surrounded by several outbuildings, corrals, and a small bunkhouse. The main house was larger than she'd expected, a 2-story structure built of sturdy logs with a wide porch wrapping around it. As the wagon pulled into the yard, Tommy came bounding out of the house, followed more sedately by his brother. "Miss Adams," the boy called excitedly. "You came." "I did indeed," she replied, forcing a smile despite her nerves. Brock approached the wagon, reaching up to help her down. His hands were strong and sure as they encircled her waist, lifting her effortlessly to the ground. Theresa felt a strange flutter in her chest at the brief contact, which she quickly attributed to her general anxiety. "Welcome to Caldwell Ranch," he said, his voice warmer than she remembered from their previous encounters. "Tommy's been talking of nothing else since I mentioned you might be joining us." "I'm glad someone's pleased about it," she replied quietly, so only he could hear. A shadow of concern crossed his face. "Having second thoughts, about 50 of them," she admitted, "but I'm here now." "And welcome," he assured her. "Let me show you where you'll be staying." As promised, the foreman's cabin was small but well built, situated about 50 yards from the main house. It consisted of 2 rooms, a main living area with a small stove and table, and a bedroom just large enough for a bed, dresser, and rocking chair. "It's not fancy," Brock said as he carried her trunks inside, "but it's clean. Had the boys fix the roof and check for critters before you arrived." "It's more than adequate," Theresa assured him, surprised by the thoughtfulness evident in the preparation. Fresh curtains hung at the windows and a vase of wildflowers sat on the table. "Tommy's idea," Brock explained, noticing her gaze on the flowers. "Said a lady deserves some pretties to welcome her. That was very kind of him. He's a good boy. Just needs some refinement, which is where you come in." Brock moved toward the door. "I'll let you get settled. Supper's at 6 in the main house. Nothing formal, just me, Tommy, and occasionally the hands when they're not taking their meals in the bunkhouse." "Mr. Caldwell," Theresa called as he reached the door. "Thank you for all of this." He turned, his expression inscrutable. "Like I said, Miss Adams, it's a business arrangement. You're providing services this ranch needs." But as he walked away, Theresa couldn't help feeling there was more to his offer than simple practicality. Whatever his reasons, she was grateful for the reprieve from judgment and the chance to plan her next steps without the immediate threat of destitution. The weeks that followed established a routine that brought unexpected comfort to Theresa's life. Each morning, she taught Tommy for 4 hours in a corner of the ranch house parlor that Brock had set up as a schoolroom, complete with a proper desk and blackboard. The boy proved to be an eager student, his natural intelligence making up for years of missed formal education. In the afternoons, Theresa attended to household matters, planning meals, organizing supplies, and gradually bringing order to a home that had clearly been managed by men alone for too long. The work was physical enough to tire her, but not so strenuous as to endanger her pregnancy, which was now becoming more visible with each passing day. Brock, true to his word, treated her with unfailing respect. He was often away during daylight hours, attending to the countless tasks required to establish a new ranch, but evenings found the three of them gathered around the dinner table, sharing the day's events. It was during these quiet moments that Theresa began to see beyond Brock Caldwell's taciturn exterior. He was intelligent, well-read despite his lack of formal education, and possessed a dry wit that occasionally surprised her into genuine laughter, something she had thought might never happen again after Benjamin's betrayal. One evening in late May, about a month after her arrival, Theresa sat on the porch of her cabin, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in spectacular shades of gold and crimson. The air was fragrant with the scent of spring flowers and the earthy aroma of newly turned soil from the kitchen garden she had started. The sound of footsteps drew her attention, and she turned to see Brock approaching, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. "Evening," he greeted her, offering one of the cups. "Thought you might enjoy some company." "Thank you," she said, accepting the coffee with a smile. "Though I should warn you it's not very strong. The doctor suggested I limit my intake in my condition." Brock settled into the second chair on her small porch. "Makes sense. Tommy's finally asleep. Boy worked hard today helping with the new calves." "He's thriving here," Theresa observed. "His reading has improved remarkably and his confidence along with it." "That's your doing," Brock said, his voice warm with appreciation. "You've got a gift for teaching." They lapsed into comfortable silence, sipping their coffee as the last light faded from the sky and stars began to emerge. Theresa found herself studying Brock's profile, the strong lines of his face softened in the gathering dusk. "Can I ask you something personal?" she ventured after a while. He turned to face her. "Suppose that depends on the question. Why haven't you ever married?" A man with land establishing a ranch. Seems like having a wife would be expected. If the question surprised him, he didn't show it. "Never found the right woman, I guess. Or maybe never stayed in one place long enough to look properly. And now, you're putting down roots here." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Now I've got a ranch to build, a brother to raise, and plenty to keep me occupied." "That's not really an answer," Theresa pointed out. "No, I suppose it isn't." He took another sip of coffee. "Truth is, marriage requires trust. Trust that the other person won't leave when things get hard. I've seen too many women broken by the realities of ranch life, and too many men who weren't worthy of the women who trusted them." His words struck uncomfortably close to Theresa's own experience. "Like Benjamin," she murmured. "Like Wallace," Brock agreed, his voice hardening slightly at the name. "Man makes a promise, he should keep it. Simple as that." "Nothing is simple about promises," Theresa said softly, her hand unconsciously moving to rest on her growing belly. "Or their consequences." Brock's gaze followed the movement. "How are you feeling, truly?" The genuine concern in his voice broke through a barrier Theresa hadn't realized she'd built. "Scared," she admitted. "Angry, sad, sometimes all at once. Understandable, but also grateful," she continued, surprising herself with the realization. "For this place. For the chance you've given me and my child." Brock shifted in his chair, seeming almost uncomfortable with her gratitude. "You've earned your keep 10 times over already. Ranch has never run so smoothly." "Still," she persisted, "not many men would have offered what you did, especially knowing my circumstances." He was quiet for so long that Theresa thought he might not respond, When he finally spoke, his voice was low and intense. "My mother found herself in a similar situation," he said. "Different circumstances. She was widowed, not abandoned but alone and expecting nonetheless. No one offered her shelter or respect. She died bringing Tommy into this world in a room not fit for animals because decent folk turned their backs." Theresa's throat tightened. "I'm so sorry." "It was a long time ago," he said, his tone indicating the subject was closed. "Point is, I know what it means to need a helping hand. No shame in that." As he rose to leave, Theresa found herself wishing he would stay longer, a feeling that both confused and alarmed her. She wasn't ready to trust another man, especially not with her heart. Yet something about Brock Caldwell's steadfast nature called to her, like a lighthouse beckoning to a storm-tossed ship. "Good night, Miss Adams," he said, tipping his hat. "Theresa," she replied impulsively. "I think after all this time you might call me Theresa." A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his features. "Theresa, then, and I'm Brock to my friends. Are we friends, Mr. Caldwell?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light. "I'd like to think so," he replied seriously. "Good night, Theresa." As she watched him walk back toward the main house, silhouetted against the starlit sky, Theresa realized with a jolt of surprise that she was beginning to care for this quiet, honorable man. The thought was as frightening as it was unexpected. June brought intense heat and the full bloom of Theresa's pregnancy. Now in her 7th month, she found her energy flagging by mid-afternoon, though she tried to maintain her duties. One particularly sweltering day, Theresa was in the kitchen preparing dinner when a wave of dizziness overcame her. She gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady herself, but the room continued to spin. The next thing she knew, strong arms were catching her as she fell, and Brock's worried face swam into view. "Theresa, can you hear me?" "I'm fine," she mumbled, embarrassed by her weakness. "Just a little light-headed." He ignored her protests, lifting her easily and carrying her to the parlor sofa. "Tommy," he called sharply, "ride for Doc Wilson. Tell him Miss Adams has fainted." "No, really," Theresa insisted as Tommy dashed out. "It's just the heat. I don't need the doctor." Brock's expression was unyielding. "You're carrying a child and you collapsed. That's reason enough for me." His concern touched her deeply, even as she tried to dismiss it. "The doctor will say exactly what I'm telling you, that I need to rest and stay cool." "Then he can say it to my face," Brock replied, his tone brooking no argument. He placed a cool, damp cloth on her forehead. "You work too hard. I should have seen it sooner." "It's nothing to do with work," Theresa protested. "Pregnant women sometimes get dizzy. It's perfectly normal." "Normal or not, you're going to rest. Starting now." When Dr. Wilson arrived an hour later, his diagnosis was exactly as Theresa had predicted: heat exhaustion exacerbated by her pregnancy. He prescribed rest, plenty of fluids and lighter duties until the baby arrived. "I told you," Theresa said weakly after the doctor left. "You did," Brock acknowledged. "But from now on, you're going to follow those instructions to the letter. Tommy can manage his studies with less formal teaching for a while, and I'm hiring a woman from town to help with the household chores." "That's not necessary," Theresa protested. "I can still—" "It's not open for discussion," he interrupted firmly. "Your health and the baby's come first. Everything else is secondary." The vehemence in his voice startled her. "Why do you care so much?" she asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Brock's expression softened, vulnerability briefly visible in his blue eyes. "Because you matter, Theresa, to Tommy, to this ranch." He hesitated, then added quietly, "to me." Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her to ponder the meaning behind his words and the fluttering in her heart that had nothing to do with her pregnancy. The following weeks brought significant changes to Theresa's life at the ranch. True to his word, Brock hired Mrs. Peterson, a widow from town, to come 3 times a week to help with the heaviest household chores. Tommy continued his studies with less formal instruction, often reading aloud to Theresa as she rested in the shade of the porch. Brock himself seemed to be everywhere at once, managing the ranch while also checking frequently on Theresa's well-being. He brought wildflowers for her cabin, special treats from town, and spent many evenings simply sitting with her on the porch, talking about everything from books to cattle breeding to their respective childhoods. It was during one of these evening conversations in late July that Theresa finally gathered the courage to ask the question that had been on her mind for weeks. "Brock," she began hesitantly, "what happens after the baby comes?" He looked at her quizzically. "What do you mean?" "Our arrangement was for me to teach Tommy and help with the household. With a newborn, I won't be able to fulfill those duties, at least not immediately." "You're worried I'll ask you to leave?" he asked, his voice incredulous. Theresa nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "It would be understandable. A crying infant isn't conducive to ranch life." Brock was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and intense. "Theresa, look at me." She raised her eyes to his, startled by the emotion she saw there. "You and that baby aren't going anywhere unless you want to. This is your home for as long as you wish it to be." "But our agreement—" "Hang the agreement," he interrupted. "This stopped being about a business arrangement a long time ago, at least for me." Theresa's heart began to race. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering directly, he reached out and took her hand in his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I'm not good with words like this, never had much practice, but I care for you, Theresa, more than I thought possible." "Brock," she whispered, both thrilled and terrified by his confession. "I don't know if I can. After Benjamin, I'm not Wallace," he said firmly. "I don't make promises lightly and I never break them. I'm not asking for anything right now except that you stay, that you give us time." Tears welled in Theresa's eyes. "I'm afraid to trust again." "I understand that," he said softly, "and I'll wait, however long it takes." Before she could respond, a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen, causing her to gasp and clutch her belly. Brock was instantly alert. "What is it, the baby?" "I don't know," she managed through gritted teeth. "It's too early. I'm not due for another month." Another pain hit, stronger than the first. Theresa cried out, fear gripping her heart. "Something's wrong." Without hesitation, Brock scooped her into his arms and carried her toward the main house, shouting for Tommy as he went. "Get the wagon ready and ride for the doctor. Now." The next hours passed in a blur of pain and fear for Theresa. Brock refused to leave her side as labor progressed with frightening speed. Dr. Wilson arrived just as the contractions reached their peak, his weathered face grave as he examined her. "The baby's coming early," he confirmed, "but everything seems to be progressing normally otherwise." "Will they be all right?" Brock demanded, his face pale with worry. "Early births are always risky," the doctor replied honestly, "but Miss Adams is strong and the baby sounds healthy. We'll do everything possible." Theresa gripped Brock's hand as another contraction tore through her. "Don't leave," she whispered. "Wild horses couldn't drag me away," he promised, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. The labor lasted through the night, Theresa's strength waning with each passing hour. Dawn was breaking when Dr. Wilson finally announced, "I can see the head." "One more big push, Miss Adams." Gathering her remaining strength, Theresa bore down with everything she had. A moment later, the room filled with the indignant cry of a newborn baby. "You have a son," Dr. Wilson announced, placing the tiny, squalling infant on Theresa's chest. "Small, but with a good set of lungs on him." Tears streamed down Theresa's face as she gazed at her child. Despite his early arrival, He appeared perfect 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and a shock of dark hair like his father's. The thought brought a momentary pang, but it was quickly washed away by the overwhelming love she felt for this small miracle. "He's beautiful," Brock whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Theresa looked up at him, seeing the wonder in his eyes as he gazed at the baby. "Would you like to hold him?" Surprise and uncertainty flashed across Brock's face. "I don't know if I should." "Please," she said softly. "You've been here for us when it mattered most. You should be the first to hold him." With reverent care, Brock took the tiny bundle into his arms. His large, calloused hands seemed enormous against the baby's small form, yet he held the child with surprising confidence. "What will you name him?" he asked, his eyes never leaving the infant's face. Theresa had considered many names over the months, but in this moment, only one felt right. "Daniel," she said. "It means God is my judge, not men, not society, but God alone." "Daniel," Brock repeated, smiling down at the baby. "It suits him." As Theresa watched Brock with her son, something shifted in her heart. This man, who owed her nothing, had given her everything: safety, respect. And now, as she watched him gently rock her child, a glimpse of what family could truly mean. The days following Daniel's birth were a whirlwind of adjustment and joy. Despite his early arrival, the baby thrived, gaining strength and weight with each passing day. Dr. Wilson visited regularly, pronouncing the child determined to make up for his hasty entrance into the world. Brock proved to be an unexpected source of support, helping with the baby whenever he wasn't attending to ranch business. He seemed fascinated by Daniel, often simply watching the infant sleep or holding him while Theresa rested. Tommy, too, took to his role as honorary uncle with enthusiasm, proudly showing Daniel off to the ranch hands and regaling the baby with stories far too advanced for a newborn to comprehend. It was a kind of healing, Theresa realized, not just of her body, but of her heart. The betrayal and abandonment that had brought her to this place were gradually being overshadowed by the warmth and acceptance she found in this makeshift family. One evening in late August, as summer's heat began to give way to autumn's cooler breath, Theresa sat on the porch of the main house, Daniel sleeping peacefully in her arms. The ranch was quiet, the day's work done, and the sky ablaze with the spectacular colors of a Montana sunset. Brock emerged from the house, 2 cups of tea in his hands. "Thought you might like something warm," he said, offering her one of the cups. "Air's getting a bit of a chill to it." "Thank you," she replied, carefully shifting Daniel to free one hand. Brock settled into the chair beside her, his eyes drawn to the sleeping infant. "He's growing fast." "Too fast," Theresa agreed with a smile. "Dr. Wilson says he's completely caught up to where he should be despite being born early." "He's strong," Brock observed, "like his mother." The simple compliment warmed her more than the tea. "I wasn't strong when I came here," she admitted. "I was terrified, heartbroken, and completely lost." "You were always strong," Brock contradicted gently. "Coming here, accepting help when you needed it, that took courage. Facing each day despite what Wallace did to you, that took strength." Theresa's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the sun was sinking behind the mountains in a final blaze of glory. "I've been thinking a lot about choices lately. The ones that brought me here, the ones I need to make going forward." "Any conclusions?" Brock asked, his voice carefully neutral. She turned to look at him directly. "Yes, I want to stay, Brock. Not just as Tommy's teacher or as your housekeeper, but as part of this place, this family we've somehow created." The hope that dawned in his eyes nearly took her breath away. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying I care for you," she replied softly. "More than I thought possible after what happened. I'm still scared, still healing, but I don't want to let fear keep me from happiness anymore." Brock set aside his tea and knelt before her, taking her free hand in his. "Theresa, I've loved you since before Daniel was born. Watching you teach Tommy, seeing your strength through everything that's happened, holding your son every moment has only deepened what I feel for you." Tears welled in Theresa's eyes. "But Daniel isn't yours. He's a reminder of he's part of you," Brock interrupted firmly. "That makes him precious to me. I'd be honored to raise him as my own if you'll let me." "You really mean that?" she whispered. "Every word," he promised. "I want to build a life with you, Theresa. You, me, Daniel, and Tommy, a real family." Daniel stirred in her arms, tiny fists waving as he blinked awake. Brock reached out, offering his finger, which the baby promptly grasped with surprising strength. "Look at that grip," he chuckled. "He's going to be a fine horseman someday." Theresa's heart swelled with love for both of them, her son and this remarkable man who had entered their lives when they needed him most. "I think I'd like that," she said softly, "building a life together." Brock's smile could have outshone the setting sun. "Then that's what we'll do." As twilight deepened around them, Brock leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to Theresa's lips there first. It was tender, reverent, a promise of the love and respect he would always offer her. When they parted, Brock stroked Daniel's cheek with gentle fingertips. "What do you think, little man? Should I marry your mama and make us all officially a family?" Daniel's response was a sleepy yawn, which made both adults laugh softly. "I think that's a yes," Theresa said, her heart lighter than it had been in months. Brock rose and retrieved something from his pocket. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment," he explained, revealing a simple gold ring with a small, sparkling diamond. "It was my mother's. I'd be honored if you'd wear it." Theresa gasped. "Brock, it's beautiful." "But are you certain? This is happening so fast." "Some things don't need time," he replied. "Some things you just know in your heart are right." Looking into his earnest blue eyes, Theresa found she agreed. This wasn't the impetuous romance she'd had with Benjamin, built on superficial attraction and empty promises. This was deeper, founded on mutual respect, shared challenges, and genuine caring that had grown naturally over time. "Yes," she said, her voice steady with conviction. "Yes, I'll marry you, Brock Caldwell." His face lit with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "I promise you, Theresa, I will be a good husband to you and a good father to Daniel. You'll never regret putting your trust in me." "I believe you," she replied, and realized it was true. Despite everything, she had found the strength to trust again, to love again. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they sat together, Brock, Theresa, and baby Daniel, a family forged not from blood or obligation, but from choice and love. And in that moment, Theresa knew that sometimes the end of one dream could lead to the beginning of something far more beautiful than she had ever imagined. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Brock insisted they not wait too long for the wedding, a sentiment Theresa shared. They decided on a small ceremony at the ranch in early October, when the Montana landscape would be ablaze with autumn colors. Word of their engagement spread quickly through Custer. To Theresa's surprise, the news was met with general approval from the townsfolk. It seemed that Brock's respectability as a successful rancher outweighed any lingering scandal attached to her name. Even Mrs. Hawkins, when they encountered her during a trip to town for wedding supplies, offered somewhat stiff congratulations. "Well, Miss Adams," the older woman said, eyeing Theresa's ring, "it appears your circumstances have indeed changed dramatically. Mr. Caldwell is fortunate to have secured such an accomplished teacher for his brother." The thinly veiled implication that Brock was marrying her primarily for Tommy's benefit stung, but Theresa merely smiled. "We're both very fortunate, Mrs. Hawkins. Love has a way of finding us when we least expect it. Brock, who had been discussing business with the general store owner, approached just in time to hear the exchange. He slipped his arm around Theresa's waist in a clear gesture of affection. "Afternoon, Mrs. Hawkins. I see you've been congratulating my fiancé." "Indeed," the woman replied, somewhat flustered by his open display of attachment. "The town will miss her skills as a teacher, of course." "I imagine they will," Brock agreed pleasantly, "but our son will benefit from having her full attention, as will any future children we're blessed with." His casual inclusion of Daniel as "our son" and the mention of future children left Mrs. Hawkins momentarily speechless. Taking advantage of her silence, Brock tipped his hat politely. "If you'll excuse us, we have quite a few preparations to attend to." "Good day, madam." As they walked away, Theresa squeezed his hand gratefully. "Thank you for that." "For what?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "For calling Daniel our son, for standing up to her judgment." Brock's expression softened. "Theresa, from the moment you agreed to marry me, Daniel became my son in every way that matters. I'll make it legal as soon as we're wed if you're agreeable." Tears pricked at Theresa's eyes. "I would like that very much." Back at the ranch, preparations continued apace. The main house underwent a thorough cleaning, and Brock surprised Theresa by having carpenters come to expand the master bedroom and add a proper nursery adjacent to it. "I thought we'd live in the main house after we're married," he explained when she questioned the expense. "Unless you'd prefer to keep your cabin. The main house makes more sense for a family," Theresa agreed, touched by his thoughtfulness. "Though I admit I've grown rather fond of my little cabin. It'll still be here," Brock assured her. "Maybe as a guest house or a quiet place for you to retreat when ranch life gets too hectic." The day before the wedding, Theresa stood in her cabin, packing the last of her personal belongings. Daniel lay on a blanket nearby, kicking his legs and cooing at the mobile Brock had crafted for him, a clever arrangement of carved wooden animals that spun in the breeze. A knock at the door announced Tommy's arrival. The boy had grown inches in the month since Theresa had first met him, and his confidence had blossomed along with his height. "Brock sent me to carry these boxes to the house," he explained, then hesitated, "and to ask if you're getting nervous about tomorrow." Theresa smiled at the transparency of the message. "You can tell your brother that yes, I'm a little nervous but also very happy." Tommy grinned. "He's nervous too, though he won't admit it. Caught him practicing his vows to the horses this morning." The image of stoic, self-assured Brock rehearsing wedding vows to an audience of horses made Theresa laugh. "That's actually quite sweet." "Don't tell him I told you," Tommy cautioned. "He'd never live it down with the hands." "Your secret is safe with me," she promised. As Tommy began gathering the boxes, Theresa hesitated, then asked, "Tommy, how do you feel about all this? About me marrying your brother, about Daniel becoming part of your family?" The boy set down the boxes and considered her question seriously. "Honest truth, Miss Adams. I think it's the best thing that's happened to us since Brock decided to settle down here. You make him happy. He smiles more, laughs more, and Daniel." He glanced at the baby with surprising tenderness. "Well, it's nice not being the youngest anymore. I kind of like being an uncle." "You're going to be a wonderful influence on him," Theresa said softly. "And I hope you know that even though I'll officially be your sister-in-law tomorrow, I'll always be your teacher too, for as long as you want to learn." Tommy's face lit up. "Does that mean we're still doing lessons?" "Of course," she confirmed. "Perhaps not as formally as before, but your education is important to both me and your brother." "Good," he said with evident relief. "Because I've been thinking I might want to be a doctor someday like Doc Wilson, and I reckon that takes a heap of learning." Theresa's heart swelled with pride at his ambition. It certainly does, but I have no doubt you're more than capable. We'll make sure you have all the education you need." As Tommy left with the boxes, Theresa gazed around the cabin that had been her sanctuary during some of the most tumultuous months of her life. Tomorrow, she would begin a new chapter not as a desperate woman seeking refuge, but as a wife and mother helping to build something lasting and beautiful. The wedding day dawned clear and crisp, the October sky a brilliant blue above the golden landscape. Theresa stood at the window of the upstairs guest room where she'd spent the night, watching as the ranch came to life below. Ranch hands in their Sunday best moved chairs into place in the yard, where a simple arch decorated with autumn flowers marked the spot where she and Brock would exchange vows. A soft knock at the door heralded the arrival of Clara Wilson, the doctor's wife, who had graciously offered to help Theresa prepare for the ceremony. "My goodness, what a beautiful day for a wedding," Clara exclaimed as she entered, carrying Theresa's wedding dress, a creation of ivory silk that they had commissioned from the town seamstress. "How are you feeling, dear?" "Nervous," Theresa admitted. "Happy, grateful." Clara smiled warmly. All perfectly normal feelings for a bride. She hung the dress carefully on the wardrobe door. "Where's little Daniel?" "Tommy's looking after him downstairs. He's become quite adept at caring for his nephew." "That boy has grown up tremendously since you came into their lives," Clara observed as she began helping Theresa with her hair. "The whole town has noticed the change in both Caldwell men, actually." Theresa met Clara's eyes in the mirror. "Do people still talk about my situation?" The older woman's expression softened. "There will always be those who find fault with others, my dear. But the majority of folks in Custer respect what they've seen: a good man stepping up to care for a woman in need, and genuine love growing between them. That's a story most people can appreciate." Her words eased something in Theresa's heart. Perhaps in time her past would truly become just that, the past, a chapter closed as a new one began. By noon, everything was ready. Guests had arrived from town: the Wilsons, the storekeeper and his wife, several neighboring ranchers with their families, and even a few of Theresa's former students. They gathered in the yard under the crisp autumn sky, seated on chairs and hay bales arranged in neat rows. Brock stood beneath the flower-decked arch, looking uncharacteristically nervous in his new suit. Beside him, Tommy held Daniel, the baby resplendent in a tiny suit Theresa had sewn especially for the occasion. Dr. Wilson, who would perform the ceremony in his capacity as Justice of the Peace, gave Theresa a reassuring smile as she appeared on the porch. "Ready, my dear." "More than ready," she replied with certainty. As the small gathering of guests rose to their feet, Theresa began her walk toward her future husband. There was no father to give her away, no family to stand beside her, yet she didn't feel alone. The months at Caldwell Ranch had given her something she had never truly had before: a sense of belonging, of home. Brock's face as she approached was a study in emotion: awe, joy, and a tenderness that made her heart swell. When she reached him, he took her hands in his touch steadying her as it always did. "You are so beautiful," he whispered, his voice rough with feeling. "Doctor." Wilson cleared his throat and began the ceremony, his words floating on the crisp autumn air as he spoke of commitment, partnership, and love's enduring power. When the time came for their vows, Brock's voice rang clear and true. "Theresa, I take you as my wife, promising to stand beside you through all of life's joys and sorrows. I will be father to Daniel and any children we may be blessed with, provider for our family, and faithful companion to you for all the days of my life. This I vow before God and these witnesses, with a full heart and unwavering commitment." Tears blurred Theresa's vision as she responded with her own vows. Brock, I take you as my husband, grateful for the strength and kindness you have shown me. I promise to be a loving wife, a devoted mother to our children, and to build with you a home filled with warmth and happiness. This I vow before God and these witnesses, with deep gratitude and abiding love. The simple gold bands they exchanged seemed to catch fire in the autumn sunlight as they slipped them onto each other's fingers, tangible symbols of promises made and kept. By the authority vested in me, Dr. Wilson proclaimed, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Brock's kiss was tender yet passionate, a perfect expression of the love that had grown between them. As they turned to face their guests, now officially husband and wife, Tommy stepped forward with Daniel. I believe this young man wants to congratulate his parents, he said with a grin. Brock took the baby in one arm, his other still wrapped around Theresa's waist. What do you think, Daniel? He asked softly. Did we do this right? In response, Daniel grabbed for Brock's tie with one tiny fist, provoking laughter from the guests and cementing the moment as one of pure, uncomplicated joy. The celebration that followed was simple, but heartfelt, a feast prepared by Theresa and Clara Wilson, music provided by one of the ranch hands who proved surprisingly adept with a fiddle, and dancing that continued well into the evening. As twilight approached, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, Brock found Theresa sitting on the porch, watching their guests with a contented smile. Mrs. Caldwell, he said, offering his hand. Would you walk with me? She placed her hand in his without hesitation. Lead the way, Mr. Caldwell. He guided her away from the celebration, toward a small rise that overlooked the ranch. The view from the hilltop was breathtaking, the main house aglow with lantern light, the surrounding buildings and corrals nestled against the backdrop of mountains turning purple in the gathering dusk. I come up here sometimes when I need to think, Brock explained. The first time was the day after you arrived. I stood right here, watching you hang laundry behind your cabin, and I knew. Knew what? Theresa asked, her heart quickening. That you were going to change everything. That somehow, despite all the hurt you'd been through, you were going to bring something to this ranch that it was missing. And what was that? His arm circled her waist, drawing her close against the evening chill. Life, hope, love. He gestured toward the horizon, where the last rays of sun gilded the landscape. I wanted to bring you here before sunset, to show you something. As Theresa watched, the sun slipped behind the distant mountains in a final blaze of glory, setting the sky afire with color. It's beautiful, she breathed. This is where I knew I wanted to propose to you, Brock said softly. Watching the sunset from this spot, I had it all planned out, speech memorized, ring ready. Then Daniel decided to arrive early and changed all our plans. Theresa smiled at the memory. I think I prefer how things happened. It was perfectly imperfect, just like life. Still, Brock continued, turning to face her fully, I wanted to bring you here on our wedding day to say properly what I should have said then. To Theresa's surprise, he knelt before her, still holding her hands in his. Theresa Adams Caldwell, I love you more than I ever thought possible. You and Daniel have made my life complete in ways I never imagined. I promise to spend every day trying to be worthy of the trust you've placed in me, to be the husband and father this family deserves. And I swear to you, on everything I hold sacred, that you will never face another sunrise or sunset alone, as long as there is breath in my body. Tears spilled freely down Theresa's cheeks as she pulled him to his feet. I believe you, she whispered. With all my heart, I believe you. His kiss was a perfect culmination of the day, tender yet passionate, a promise of the life they would build together on this land they both loved. As they walked back toward the celebration hand in hand, Theresa reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, she had stood at another horizon, watching another man leave, her heart broken and her future uncertain. Now she walked beside a man whose love and honor she never doubted, toward a home and family that welcomed her completely. Sometimes, she realized, what seems like an ending is merely the beginning of a far more beautiful story. 5 years later, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the yard of Caldwell Ranch as Theresa hung the last of the laundry on the line. From the corral, nearby came the sound of laughter. Brock teaching Daniel, now 5 years old, to sit properly on his first pony. The boy's dark curls caught the sunlight as he bounced excitedly in the small saddle, his father's strong hands keeping him steady. "Mama, look at me," Daniel called, waving enthusiastically. "I'm riding all by myself." "I see you, sweetheart," Theresa called back, smiling at his exaggeration. Brock's hands were still firmly on both child and pony. "You're doing wonderfully." At the sound of her voice, the baby girl strapped to Theresa's back began to stir. 2-year-old Emily had her father's blue eyes and her mother's determined spirit, a combination that kept the entire household on their toes. "Is she waking up?" Brock asked as he lifted Daniel from the pony and set him on the ground. "I thought she'd sleep longer after all that running around this morning." "Your daughter has never been one for long naps," Theresa replied, reaching back to loosen the carrier. "Here, you take her while I finish this laundry." Brock scooped Emily into his arms with practiced ease, tossing her into the air and catching her as she squealed with delight. "There's my little wildcat," he said, kissing her chubby cheek. "Did you have good dreams?" Theresa watched them, her heart full. In the 5 years since their wedding, Caldwell Ranch had flourished, growing into one of the most successful operations in the territory. Tommy, now 20, was away at medical school in Denver, fulfilling his dream with Brock's full support. Their family had expanded with Emily's birth, and soon would grow again, though she hadn't yet told Brock about the new life growing within her. She was saving that news for tonight, a special surprise for their anniversary. "When's Uncle Tommy coming home?" Daniel asked, climbing on the corral fence. "He promised to bring me a real stethoscope." "Next month," Brock replied, settling Emily on his shoulders, "and I'm sure he'll remember his promise." Daniel nodded with satisfaction, completely secure in the knowledge that promises made in this family were always kept. It was one of the many gifts Brock had given him, a foundation of trust and certainty that Theresa knew would serve her son well throughout his life. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the Montana sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, Theresa finished her chores and joined her family. "Shall we walk up to our spot?" Brock suggested, reaching for her hand. "It's a perfect evening for a sunset." Their spot, the hilltop where Brock had brought her on their wedding day, and where they often returned for important family moments. "That sounds lovely," she agreed, already anticipating his reaction to her news. The climb was easy, even for Daniel's short legs and Theresa's slightly weary ones. At the top, they settled on the grassy slope, Emily playing with wildflowers while Daniel peppered his father with questions about the ranch, the cattle, and when he could have a larger pony. Brock answered each inquiry with patience, his arm around Theresa's shoulders as they watched the sun sink lower in the sky. This moment, peaceful, ordinary, yet somehow perfect, encapsulated everything their life together had become. "I have something to tell you," Theresa said softly as the first stars began to appear in the deepening blue above them. Brock turned to her, his expression curious. "What is it, love?" "I visited Dr. Wilson yesterday while you were checking the north pasture." A flicker of concern crossed his face. "Are you ill? Why didn't you say something sooner?" "Not ill," she assured him, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "Just expecting." For a moment he simply stared at her, processing her words. Then his face broke into a radiant smile, his eyes shining with joy. "Another baby. You're sure?" Dr. Wilson confirmed it, due in early spring. Brock gathered her into his arms, his kiss conveying all the love and happiness words couldn't express. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair, "for everything you've given me, for the family we've created." "What's happening?" Daniel demanded, tugging at his father's sleeve. "Why are you squeezing Mama like that?" Brock laughed, reaching out to pull his son into the embrace. "Because I'm very happy, partner. Your mama just told me you and Emily are going to have a new little brother or sister next year." Daniel's eyes widened. "A baby, like the one at the Miller's house." "Just like that," Theresa confirmed. "What do you think about that?" The boy considered seriously for a moment. I hope it's a brother. Emily's okay, but she chews on my wooden soldiers." Brock's laughter joined Theresa's, the joyful sound carrying on the evening breeze across the land they'd made their own. As the last light faded from the sky, they remained together on the hilltop, a family bound not by convention or circumstance, but by choice and love, the strongest bonds of all. And Theresa, watching the stars emerge above the ranch that had become her sanctuary and home, felt a profound gratitude for the path that had led her here. What had begun in abandonment and despair had transformed into a life richer and more fulfilling than she could have imagined. Benjamin Wallace was a distant memory now, a chapter closed. In his place stood Brock Caldwell, steadfast, honorable, and true to every promise he'd made that day beneath the wedding arch and every day since. As they walked back to the house, their children's hands in theirs, Theresa knew with absolute certainty that this was where she belonged, not as a woman who had been rescued, but as a partner who had helped build something beautiful and lasting on this Montana land. Together, they had created not just a home, but a legacy of love that would endure long after the sunset of their own lives. And that, she thought as she glanced at her husband's profile in the starlight, was the greatest gift of all, to love and be loved, completely and without reservation, until the end of their days.